Live. Welcome back to the DST show. I want to make this a brief but live conversation. If anybody has your own opinions to go about it, go ahead right away. I don't mind hearing anybody's opinion uh, about the current situation. Is quite of a bit of a beef, if some sort, back in on ESPN. Not that long ago, over around under 48 hours ago, we had a conversation over the judgment of Doc Rivers having possibly a poor start, recently taken the reins as Milwaukee Bucks head coach. I had a recent video on Doc Rivers and over on First Take involving Shannon Sharp and Stephen A. Smith, including also ESPN analyst JJ Reddick. It did not go well. JJ Reddick was lambasting and pretty much calling up the lack of accountability over Doc Rivers over his recent adjustment, defensive play calling, and putting his players under the bus. And Rivers, possibly speaking of experience, he did play through 2013 to 2017 under Doc Rivers during the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, Lob City era, as well as Austin Rivers, also currently his son. Uh, that force over the nepotism got into low blowing, the consummate low blows over current players' careers, over Austin Rivers, even going under the reins that JJ Reddick's career seasons came under the reins of Doc Rivers, even though he's been primarily a source of a postseason, a rotation piece for the past several seasons, calling him a glorified spot up shooter that has no defensive involvement over to the teams. Has even spurred up former Timberwolves teammate of Austin Rivers, Patrick Beverly, that's also a Clippers shit. He plays for a lot of teams. I forgot that he got traded over to the Milwaukee Bucks for a more important guard out of Cameron Payne. And now he's up also calling out JJ Reddick, undermining his tenured career, calling him that he's been pretty much his career been made since Doc Rivers been coaching him. That's crazy because last time I checked, JJ Reddick has had more postseason appearances than both these Negroes combined. Austin Rivers, the only reason they even bring up him in conversation is because Doc Rivers taking him over as head coach. That's practically it. There's been no upside of production Austin Rivers has done over his career unless we talk about his high school mixtape or what he's done in college. He's been a perennial roster filler for majority of postseason teams over his stint in Houston, over his stint over in New York, Denver, Minnesota. And that was the last time he was active, and he only started 10 games. He really hasn't even started over 35 games in his NBA career, if we look here right now. He hasn't started any source of over 35 games over the last 7 seasons since his stint over in the Los Angeles Clippers. So I don't know where this piling over, and I understand he wants to defend his father, knowing that he has been a majority of contending teams. So because you had career seasons, and JJ Reddick had career seasons over from 28 to like 32 years old, and still productive, even having his best 3-point shooting splits when he left the Clippers over a player option to play for the Philadelphia 76ers, and shot a career astounding 47% from behind the arc while starting majority of the games he's played. While Rivers, at the age of 30, we can still get production over 32 years old just seeing over the Milwaukee Bucks squad right now. And they've been a worse defensive team, not even beating average age of 18 over the Memphis Grizzlies team that they lost in convincing fashion. And hell, the last time you even got double digits in your career was under Doc Rivers coaching. That's possibly the most baffling judgment to try to backhand and devalue somebody's career that has had more experience coaching with Doc Rivers, Stan Van Gundy, and Scott. Like it's ridiculous. And unlike Austin Rivers, JJ Reddick has been a more pivotal piece of depth over a majority of his NBA career. So him even devaluing that career because your best career you averaged 15 points and you played 59 over the last 61, while JJ Reddick, like come on, man, you're not going anywhere with this. Rivers, he was 6 man of the year conversation over an NBA era around 2006 to 7 to 2013. The priority wasn't even behind the arc shooting. And he was one of the more efficient guys that you need for a postseason contending team. And even his last stint over in Orlando, he played. He had career seasons in Los Angeles, yes. He had 47% from the arc. He started at 75 out of his 75. But look at how he's played over in Philadelphia, New Orleans, Dallas. So discrediting that as a whole is possibly the most immature, silliest source of critiquing I've ever heard. And I feel like Austin Rivers just lost the plot, all to defend the guy that even made his career. Rivers was used as a undermining roster fill-in journeyman, just like Patrick Beverley has been over the past 15 some odd years of his career, while JJ Reddick has been a role piece. I don't know how this beef substated, because over the last 16 some odd years, Doc Rivers has only won one NBA championship and only made like a handful of conference finals appearances while choking leading series and playoffs. So how is the criticism not justified over Austin Rivers? And knowing the rotations, and you can't even make a team that was ranked in the top 5 of defensive teams in the NBA be struggling against teams that are fighting for lottery spots now. It's ridiculous and immature. I'm not saying Reddick wasn't acting unprofessional. He wasn't overly emotional over taking over the stint that he has experienced coaching, being coached by Doc Rivers and not knowing his inability to make defensive adjustments, roster adjustments, but how that happened involving Harden leaving, Blake Griffin getting traded, DeAndre Jordan being used for more pivotal. Hell, DeAndre Jordan even won a championship without Doc Rivers. And even when you can even discredit Doc Rivers even winning an NBA title, knowing that he already had an established roster that didn't even took draft picks. It took trades. Except Rajon Rondo. And they're all gone now. There's no system. And this all accounts over to Doc Rivers, that already has experience coaching playoff contending teams. And going over this could be viable over to the players that already been coached by Doc Rivers, and how you can already turn an established roster into a perennial laughingstock in a fraudulent franchise like the Milwaukee Bucks. And even black sheep in the rain out of Adrian Griffin that worked under Doc Rivers. It's just blackballed. Like, this is just ridiculous. And this is just a joke now, because Patrick Beverley just discrediting over the career of JJ Reddick is even more of a joke. Because Pat Bev has played for more NBA teams than I have NBA jerseys. He's never been a perennial spot. Your career came out of Mike D'Antoni, has it not? Like, you're kidding me. Other than your defensive anchorship, you're a shit shooter. You weren't even decent at shooting since your time over in Minnesota and LA, Chicago. People thought you were a mainstay in Philly. Nobody ever said there was a guaranteed contract of Patrick Beverly. Shut your munchkin ass up. And now Austin Rivers is coming over to the fray just to defend his father so he can be allowed as to be a proud son over a Thanksgiving dinner. I don't feel like anybody's in the right in this situation, in my opinion, because this is just a weird beef. And this has been sadly the most interesting conversation to have because nobody's gonna be going over All-Star weekend was so great, man. And who should have got hell, it doesn't even feel worth talking about the All-Stars that's been snubbed if we got to watch a performance like that again, in my opinion. Honestly. And the whole Milwaukee Bucks franchise in general, it just snubbed over the grasp of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Because it's a small market with an all-NBA pro that has no fiddlating system because the coach has no control over the roster. Because Doc Rivers is a player coaching bitch that has no system. Austin Rivers' career has always been over nepotism and experience and nothing that he provides for any roster. And Patrick Beverly just scapegoating over the podcasting industry because he knows damn well he will be guaranteed another contract. And JJ Reddick losing his frustrations over something that's not even that important, in my opinion. I feel like this is just ridiculous. Because this completely went out of hand. Hold on. No spam. Oh, let me share over this clip. All right.
There's a lot of news when it comes to JJ Reddick.
Wish y'all would tell the whole story with me. All right. My Orlando team is the AC. No one gives me credit for getting up against the Pistons who won the title.
He ripped longtime NBA coach Doc Rivers.
I've seen the trend now. I've seen the trend for years.
What's the trend?
The trend is always making excuses. Doc, we get it. Taking over a team in the middle of the season is hard. It's hard. We get it. Just like getting traded in the middle of the season is hard for a player. We get it. But it's always an excuse. It's always throwing your team under the bus. There's never accountability with that guy. Well, there's never accountability.
With even Rivers' son responding on those same airwaves.
For someone who's not accountable, he seems to always be held responsible, considering he's the guy that's always fired when things don't go right.
Former Rivers player Patrick Beverly also weighed in on Twitter, writing,
"This man actually saved your career. Started you when no one else wanted to, and you retired to go on TV and say that."
This man, Doc, actually...
Beverly, aren't you in the podcast game because nobody's willing to start you unless somebody gets hurt?
Save your career. Started you when no one else wanted to. And you retire, go on television and say that, JJ Reddick? Now, JJ wouldn't let it slide either. Responding as such, "Pat, my guy, I had a 4-year offer with player option for the same money to be a starter for a different team. FOH saved my career."
Your best years weren't with the Clippers. I don't think he saved your career. I appreciate you, Pat. But I don't think it – this just seems a little bit weird. They're 3-7. Dame has missed most of those games. In terms of accountability, like, what are we doing here? Your best years in the NBA were when you played for him in the Clippers.
I want to understand this. Austin Rivers saying this when the only seasons he only dropped double-digit career points was playing for the Clippers while Doc Rivers was coaching, and he played for less. I want to understand the valuability because Austin Rivers is younger than JJ Reddick. What was the value? What was the contribution that Austin Rivers gave in JJ Reddick as an established rotation piece was already doing.
Let's not forget that. I don't know if there's like frustration there or there's tension there between you. I know a lot of times we had to sit you towards the end of the game due to defensive reasons, but you had your best years as a starter there, especially.
He was a spot-up shooter. Sure, there's no excuse over the defensive reasons, but he's not a Klay Thompson. He's a role piece, good off-ball spot-up shooter. He had a role on the Clippers. And then they said Jamal Crawford. That's why we had to sit you put Jamal Crawford in. What do you think Jamal Crawford was good at?
Our whole system was drafted around you because you're a shooter. Your best years were under him. It's just very ironic and kind of weird.
How's that ironic? That's judgment. They didn't win shit when Doc Rivers was coaching.
But you have this energy towards him in terms of him never.
So didn't the Sixers. So didn't the Orlando Magic when he was coaching. In only one season.
Ever being accountable, considering he's always been responsible.
From all of this.
Hell, didn't. And I'm going to say this respectfully. Tyronn Lue has been a more accomplished coach than Doc Rivers.
Reddick returned to give another take on the state of NBA media.
Since when is it players' jobs to educate people on basketball? When did that become a thing? When did that become a thing? Isn't that our job?
Damn.
Isn't that our job?
I'll answer.
I do that as my job. That's my job to educate.
How the hell does Mad Dog still have a job on ESPN? I'm not going to lie.
All
due respect, bro. I was raised with watching Mad Dog and Mike Francesca back in like the mid to late 2000s before their WFAN WFAN let them go. I think WFAN is just on YouTube now. If you guys check them out,
letting you speak, and then I'll answer.
It's our job, Stephen A., to educate people on basketball. It's our job. And here's the reality. This is the ecosystem we live in. I can do a video on my podcast. Where I break down the last 9 games the Pelicans have used Zion Williamson as the primary ball handler and what type of actions that has led to. I looked it up this morning. 54,000 views on YouTube. But I want to call out a coach yesterday. Oh, that gets tens of millions of engagements. That's the ecosystem we live in. So do fans actually want to be educated or not?
Dave Zirin would see this and reply, contempt for the audience. Nick Wright, host at FS1, would fire off this tweet in response to Reddick's comments. The great thing about modern sports media is there's literally an audience/platform for all types of coverage. You can do anything, and folks can create their own lanes/platforms where they do literally whatever they want. It's really an exciting time. I think there's a lot here, but first we must understand how layered this was. And a good tweet I saw was from Javon Edmonds. You called out your former coach and coworker, whose son is now your coworker, ESPN, after never saying any of it to his face, not to mention the best years of your career were with Doc Rivers. That would have got more engagements than anything. Not just the film study.
Dude sucks.
Exactly.
Oh, nope. Just a moment.
Listen, there's a good chance somebody's trying to hack your website right now. You gotta.
Because I'm sure nobody's trying to get over to the coach's bad side in the middle of them trying to make a playoff berth. That would cause more tension on the roster.
I was watching this and I was thinking, like, bro just hasn't worked in the space before. Like, he does the pod, and which I love, and he breaks down film, which I love. I'm a basketball nerd. I appreciate it. But he's surprised when he goes after someone he played under when, unless we hear a different argument from the source, had the best years of his career under that coach, and then just dogs him. Yeah, man, it's going to be front page headlines. People are going to run with the tweets. They're going to clip out what you said Be like, oh man, JJ versus Doc. JJ feuding with former coach. Like, yeah, that's a sexy headline. It's not, who's really had a great turnaround this year? Kobe White. Let's explain why. What are NBA fans, basketball fans, sports fans, because that's really the net you're casting here. What are they going to click on? Are they going to click on why Kobe White should be the number one player for the Chicago Bulls? Or will it be JJ Reddick calls out his former coach who he had the best years under in scathing rant on national television on number one show on national television? Like, come on. Let me also give you a hypothetical. Let's say perfect example. I leave the company.
Okay.
And then what I do is I then call out Jank. I call out Anna. I call out JR. I call out Jesus. I call out John. I call out Brett. I call out anybody. Anybody. You know what's going to get the most amount of views? Not me talking about how I feel about Kobe White. It's going to be, forward TYT employee Rick Strong bashes Jank. Like, duh.
Yeah,
On top of that,
JJ Reddick is still not accustomed because he's a former player. Over on the medium, what's going to garner the headlines.
We've seen it. It is the literal blueprint. Like, come on. We're getting mad at the wrong things. We just are. Whenever a guy who's an athlete, girl, doesn't matter, goes after a former teammate, goes after a former coach, goes after a executive of a GM rather of a team, executive of a team, you know what's going to generate the most clicks? Not, hey, you know who I really think this team should put in at left defensive mid? It's going to be this player calls out their former soccer coach. Because it is interesting. In addition, this is what we care about because y'all are so tight-lipped with us when you play. You don't give a...
Well, of the podcast scenario of things, there wasn't that much of a conversation over that. Doc Rivers should be accountable over to the roster. I don't know why Reddick. Yeah, you know why certain NBA players over in the media have to be tight-lipped because it just ruins and puts over the negative press where it's going to bring down the level of play. No, like you think Darwin Ham doesn't get that amongst the criticism around the media, not the players, because that will ruin chemistry. The front office deals with that shit, dude.
Plus an inch. Think about this, and I understand why this player would not want to get into the weeds ever again. But in a way, at least how I took it, he subtly, Justin Fields, called out Luke Getsy, offensive coordinator, who's no longer with the team because he's inept, last year.
Bruh.
And the media was like, oh, wow.
So that's where we further want to go on. Dragged out kind of the analogy of things. But that's how it is. Yeah, but that's as much as I'm going to put it over to the stream. You guys put your opinion down below.